A gathering at the Foreign Office to discuss the impact of climate change on vulnerable countries. And a gathering of experts from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, British Council, the Commonwealth Secretariat and ambassadors from many countries from Argentina to Uganda. And a speech from the British Foreign Secretary putting his perspective on the meeting.
The premise of this campaign is very, very simple. It's that climate change is obviously a scientific question where we need to be guided by the science and understand the science. It's obviously a question of technology as well, because it requires different kinds of technology to help us power our economies and our societies. It's obviously a cultural question because it challenges some of the assumptions of a throwaway society and how we husband and conserve and use resources. But climate change is also a profoundly political issue. It raises profound issues of values, issues of responsibility between generations, issues of responsibility between nations and between people, and also the profoundly important value of social justice, because the consequences of climate change are felt inequitably by a quirk of fate. Some of the countries that have been most responsible for the rise in emissions and the dangers of climate change are least vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And some of those countries that have contributed least to the changing climate nonetheless stand to suffer the most. So
Mr. Miliband explained the responsibilities between the developed and developing world.
My own judgment from my experience as Secretary of State for the Environment and now Foreign Secretary is that there is a very great deal of fear in a number of developing countries that the social justice aspect either of understanding climate change or fighting it is not properly understood. And the foundation of this campaign is that it is understood. That in the UK and increasingly in the European Union, and now to some extent in the United States as well, there is a recognition that the industrialized world needs to lead in putting its own house in order, and it also needs to help developing countries adapt and mitigate climate change.
But things, he said, were moving in the right direction.
Although there aren't 70 countries, Britain now has the first global legally binding commitments to emissions reduction between now and 2050. 80% cut by 2050. Legally binding in our law affecting all governments between now and 2050. And the European Union has ambitious targets which it will hold to. The United States, the Australians are also moving. So I think that this is an important moment for this campaign, and I think that the messages from it could have real global resonance, and I hope the coalition that's developed here is one that can be taken far and wide.
Important points to make, important discussions to follow, important decisions to take.